Okay, thank you for joining us. We're just going to leave this holding slide up for a little while whilst we let more people join, and then the webinar will begin shortly. Thanks for bearing with us. Okay, we're going to leave it another minute or so just to let a few more people come on board, and then the webinar will begin. So yeah, only a minute more and then we'll get started. Okay, the numbers seem to be steadying off a little bit here, so now is probably a good time to get started. Okay. Next slide, please, Lewis. Okay, so hello and welcome everyone to Manchester Museum, and specifically to the Bavarian, where I am right now. I'm very lucky to be here. The museum is still currently closed to the public, unfortunately, but in my capacity here as a member of staff, I'm still able to come in and work with our amazing collection, so that's very lucky. And I'm very pleased today to be able to host this webinar and bring together some really exciting panelists, which I hope you'll enjoy interacting with over the next hour or so. And the whole concept of this is to mark World Wildlife Day, which is a really exciting initiative, and especially this year with the focus on forests and livelihoods, sustaining people and planet. And when we heard about this focus of this year's event, I couldn't think of anyone better to get on board than Panama Wildlife to talk about collaborative conservation and some of their amazing initiatives over in Panama. So the webinar is going to be quite informal, hopefully, and quite interactive. So do feel free to ask questions throughout. We do have a question and answer section that I've set up, and hopefully it's working. So technology behave itself. And we will be answering questions as we go through the slides and the talks that we've got here today. So do jump in and ask your questions. So to begin with, it's probably a good idea for us to introduce the panelists. So I'm going to start with myself. So my name's Matthew O'Donnell, and I'm the Curatorial Assistant here at Manchester Museum in the Bavarian, or the live herpetological collection that we house here. And now I'll pass over to Andrew. Need to unmute yourselves, sorry. There we go.
Hi there, I'm Andrew Gray, the Curator of Herpetology at the museum. I work with Matt in the Bavarian, and although I've got a very good interest and big interest in animals in general, I've got a particular specialism in neotropical frogs. I spent a lot of time in Central America over the last 20 years working with amphibians, the biology, and particularly the conservation. It's a pleasure to be here today, to be joined by my friends and colleagues, and also you guys that are part of the webinar. So yeah, in support of World Wildlife Day. So yeah, I hope it's going to be a great webinar, and look forward to explaining a little bit more about what we do.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone. My name is Luis Urena. I'm the director of Panama Wildlife Conservation Charity. I'm speaking here from London. We are very excited to be today here in this webinar because there are a few projects that we are very proud and excited about, but especially at the end of this webinar, we will introduce you a project that I think you all might like. So please stay until the end.
Excellent. Last but not least, Eric, all the way live from Panama.
Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here with all of you celebrating the World Wildlife Day. We celebrate also the collaboration that we have been cultivating with Manchester University and Manchester Museum in particular, and also celebrating the projects that we have with other partners here in Panama and abroad. Welcome all.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, Lewis, I think you're going to kick us off now with the next slide.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to put a 1-minute video introducing why Panama Wildlife Conservation was created. Basically, those are the reasons, and I hope you can read what we say. Okay. I hope that introduced you some of the reasons why we are created. Panama is an incredible biodiverse country. We have so many species of animals and reptiles and birds and amphibians than many other countries around the world. And one of the things that we're trying to do here with PWCC is establish collaborations with people and institutions and organizations, not only in Panama, but also abroad, and introduce them to the incredible biodiversity that we have in Panama, and then elaborate collaborations that will benefit the protection of our planet and also locally benefits the communities. So our charity has been around for about, I would say now, nearly 5 years. We registered in Panama now since about 2 or 3 years. Our focus from the money that we raise in the charity is on education, develop workshops with children in local communities in Panama. But also one of the things that I wanted to mention is that the collaboration that we have with the Manchester University goes back a few years back when Eric won a grant from the National Secretary of Science in Panama to study some population of Harlequin frogs that he discovered there. And during that time, we set up the charity. We were looking for projects, and then we decided to be in touch with the University of Manchester to collaborate in this amazing project, which is the Harlequin frog, which Andrew is going to talk to you about in a minute. But also we have some projects like camera traps and sea turtles that Eric is going to talk about. And then I would like to introduce at the end Trees for Wildlife projects, which is we're very excited about to mention it. So Andrew, this is for you.
Andrew, do you need to unmute? Sorry. There we go.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Lewis. Harlequin Frog Project. Okay, so Harlequin frog or toad. As we go through the webinar, you might, or even some of the announcements that have been made today, there's a little bit of confusion because some people keep asking, is it a frog or is it a toad? And actually, for those that aren't aware, a toad is actually a type of frog. It's just a different family of frog. Particularly in the UK, we've only got frogs and toads, so we think of them as being different. But in Panama, there's many, many different groups and different families of frogs, things like tree frogs, poison frogs, and they're all different families. And the toads are just another family of frog that are typified by laying their eggs in strings. So yeah, if there's any confusion there, hopefully that will sort that. But Harlequin frogs are a really unusual group of frogs. They're very susceptible to change. They're mainly highland species, and through Central and South America, they occur in very small populations. Now, they've been really heavily hit, particularly by the chytrid fungus, and many of them, it's probably that out of all the amphibians, it's the group of frogs that's been hit probably the most. Many have become extinct. Even the harlequin frog, variable harlequin frog that we're talking about in this instance, was thought to have disappeared completely from Costa Rica. It only occurs in Costa Rica and Panama. But there are these little pockets now that have been rediscovered. So, so that's the reason why harlequin frog. But why in Panama? So Eric has been given the grant a few years ago, and we've made contact really with Lewis and Eric through the Panamanian embassy. Myself and Amanda Bamford, who's very much a collaborator in this project, and hopefully he's watching today, has been very much instrumental in developing the project with ourselves. And it started off where we did a talk, myself and her, actually at the embassy in London, where all the South American and Central American ambassadors were, and afterwards we were approached by the Panamanian ambassador to be invited to do some conservation work because he was so impressed with some of the work that we were doing in Costa Rica. So he introduced us to Panama wildlife, and I have to say that working with these two guys, Eric and Lewis, is an absolute pleasure. It's been absolutely fantastic for us. What they've done in the last 2 years has probably been more than we've done in Costa Rica in the last 10 years. It's been very, they've worked really, really hard. We've connected with the ministry, been very, very supportive. The logo there, just above Manchester University, is reflective of the support we've had from the ministry. And so yeah, that's how it kind of started. But it's a collaborative project, and it's holistic in its approach. And that's what we try and do at Manchester, at the museum. All our projects, all our amphibian projects are linked to in situ work, whether that be research, whether it be education projects. But this particular project embodies everything. So it's a real holistic. We've got in situ work, ex situ work, environmental education, and also research that Matt's going to talk about a little bit later. So if we could move on, thanks Lewis. The first thing I'd like to talk about really is, and this is something that obviously as a Manchester University, we're very, very well placed to do, and that's obviously education. But environmental education and social responsibility go hand in hand, particularly in these areas that are outside the UK. So we do a lot of stuff locally, but the local and global aspect to this project is really something that's key. To be able to go into some of these areas. This is the Santa Fe National Park, and this is an area that Eric's been working in for many, many years. It's a beautiful place. I was able to go there a couple of years ago, and some of the communities that live in this particular national park are very underfunded. So through Panama Wildlife Conservation and ourselves now, we're able to support their education to a degree. We've been providing materials, things like booklets, We've been supporting environmental education sessions in the schools, which Eric's been delivering for us. And they're also training the local people that live there, some of the adults, to actually get very much involved in the project, in the monitoring. We've been training them up as co-researchers, so they can help us with the monitoring of the population that occurs at Santa Fe. And it's been really, really important, teaching them the skills and educating them for the future. Many of the children there, similar to the children that we have in England, in the fact that they don't really understand the wealth of animals they have around them, the wildlife. They're used to seeing this wildlife on a daily basis, and as far as they're concerned, it's the same all over the world. So we need to really educate them that what they've got there is so special, that these Harlequin frogs are found nowhere else in the world, to make them really appreciate that. And that's what we've been doing through the help of PWCC. We've even started a Harlequin festival now that has been a fantastic success that Eric and Lewis have been delivering on an annual basis now. So yeah, environmental education is a really big aspect of this particular project. Thank you, Lewis.
Well, we are here in Alto Ortiga. It's a community in the Caribbean side of Santa Fe, and we're having this workshop trying to address the issue of the Harlequin frog conservation. We planned this workshop for many months, and finally we arrived here in this school. What we did today was just a presentation about the project, about Santa Fe, about the frog in general terms for the kids, talking about why the frog is important and what happened to the frog in the field, why this frog disappeared, and why it's so important for us as humans to preserve it. And after that, then we deliver a booklet that has been part of this partnership with the University of Manchester to provide information and educational materials to communities here in Panama, especially in Santa Fe, through this Atelopus project. And we play with them. They made some of the tasks that are inside the booklet. They love it, they like it, they repeat the name of the booklet many times, and they keep doing it along the workshop. And after that also we deliver posters about the project with general information about the frog, and very nice for the teachers here, because they never expect the University of Manchester help us with PWC to produce a very nice, big, huge poster, and this is about the frog, about the project. It's very nice. They never expect. They were really happy, and they asked for more. Yeah. Now we come with this initiative. It is a partnership between Panama Wildlife Conservation and with the Manchester University. So Manchester University, in my view, provides this expertise, the academic advice to the project, and also with the partnership of PWC that can, come here, provide funds and resources to this project to allow the project, continue in the future. The new generations are the future of this planet, and we want them to be prepared for the challenge that they will face. And we have the responsibility to transfer the knowledge and try to engage them to preserve, really be active in the future to preserve this environment that they have.
That's great. Thanks, Lewis. That's super. So the national park itself is an absolutely fantastic place. I've traveled many different places in the world, but going to this particular place with Eric and Lewis was a real pleasure. It was the last time I was actually able to go away before kind of lockdown a couple of years ago. So it's still very fresh in my mind, and it was something really, really special. Panama, for anybody that's not been, you need to go to Panama because the place is incredible. But the Santa Fe National Park is an area that is normally quite inaccessible, but unfortunately they're actually building a road through. So it was really important that we got some data, that we got some preliminary data before this road started impacting the populations. So one of the key aims was really to try and get some background data before we start, some baseline data. So I went out there, it's a couple of years ago now, and we raised some funds for some data loggers. I went out with Eric to actually start monitoring the population there. But one of the other aims was to actually collect a very small amount, very few amount of specimens, so that we could actually create what's called a safety net. Now, these are very variable in the populations. They're called Atelopus varius because the species is so variable, and each population is quite different. And the ones at Santa Fe National Park are unique to that particular area. So although there's other work being done in Panama to save different populations and work with them, and it's really commendable, some of the work that's being done in Panama by some other people, but nobody was actually working with this particular population. So it was important, and we were asked by the authorities, by the ministry, if we would actually work with them. We've got a very good background, reputation for working with frogs long term in Manchester. We've got species that we've been working with the same species, same specimens for 20 years now. So we were asked if we would collect a few. It was really important to actually get an idea of how they live. If you're keeping them in captivity, you've really got to know and to be able to experience how these animals are living so that you can recreate it in captivity. So it was really important that I went there, but it was an amazing trip. We were walking down the stream, we were up to our waist in water, climbing waterfalls and really searching for these beautiful frogs. And they only really come out, I don't know if you can see there, but if you look at the screen, although you're looking at the two pictures on either side, if you look in the middle at the bottom there, you'll see the little Harlequin frog on the moss. And they are very, very hard to spot. Even though they're brightly coloured, they are, you do have to get your eye in to be able to find these frogs. But we only collected a very few, the minimum numbers, and we actually only collected really small specimens. So some of the juveniles that in most cases probably wouldn't make it. So it was, you know, we feel it was quite ethical to do that. Minimum numbers, back to Manchester. We've actually had them and we've been maintaining them now for about 2 years, very successfully. They've grown, they've really taken to captivity, and they look absolutely fantastic. But it is a big responsibility. We don't really like taking anything out of the wild. It's all about what happens in the wild. But if we can raise awareness and use them in different ways to create support for the in situ population, that's really a massive benefit. Thanks, Lewis. So back in Manchester, for those that haven't been to Manchester Museum, we've got a really state-of-the-art kind of behind-the-scenes area where we keep a lot of our critically endangered frogs. We've got a very small collection now. We've really reduced it down, and all the species that we work with, we've got in situ projects with. We've also got the public exhibits, and we spend a lot of time making sure that the exhibits reflect the environment where the animals come from. So people don't just see the animals, but they get a feel for where they actually live. And that's really, really important. So the ex situ side, which is in Manchester, contributes directly to the in situ conservation. The ex situ is really important for supporting the in situ. So one of the things that we've been doing is the Sponsor a Frog initiative, where people can actually come. They've been able to come for the last 2 years and be able to see these critically endangered frogs behind the scenes. All the money from the Sponsor a Frog initiative has gone to supporting the in situ projects, and particularly buying some new data loggers so that we're able to monitor this particular project site. It's a little stream where we've been monitoring for the past year. So if we could just have the next slide, please, Lewis. And this is the site itself. It's a little stretch of forested stream. It's mid-elevation, and with using 20 data loggers along this particular stream, we're able to get a really, really accurate idea of things like the humidity levels, the changes in temperature. You can see at the bottom there, this is last year in March. So it's the same time of year, and we can see where the animals prefer to go, which temperatures they prefer to live at, humidity levels, how that changes, and also how the animals have moved, because each of these specimens is individually marked. They've got individual markings, which is why they're called variable Harlequin toads. So we're able to identify them. That's really been really, really important for this particular project. We don't need to touch the animals. We don't need to mark them. All we need to do is photograph them, and we know which ones we've re-seen. We can work out how far they've moved and what the territorialities, which again is really important for keeping them properly in captivity. But all that data has helped us to recreate exactly the right environment to be able to breed them in Manchester. Thank you, Lewis. That's great. Thanks, Lewis. So most of the people listening will understand that even though it's a safety net population, we can't just start reintroducing animals back into the wild from captivity. And the plan is that that is a backup. But one of the ways that we can really support, as you probably gathered from this, is to raise awareness about the frogs and about the project, exactly as we're doing today, so people can actually see these animals and actually identify with them. And one of the reasons we've got them is so that they are like Panamanian ambassadors back in Manchester. So we've spent a lot of time and effort, and actually we're reconstructing our main exhibit in our vivarium so that it's specifically designed to keep Harlequin frogs. And it's going to have a natural stream running through it right in the middle of this. It's typical, we're in the lockdown, so we can't finish it. But for those that will come to Manchester in the future to see these, it might be one of the only places that you'll ever get to see them. It's going to be a fantastic exhibit. But all the data and everything that we've collected in the wild, again, is really helping us in captivity. So what we do in captivity helps support the in situ, and what we do in situ helps support the ex situ. So it's definitely worth waiting for. I'm just going to hand over to Matt now, who's going to talk briefly about some of the research work that we're doing, particularly with the collections in Manchester in the frog collection. Thanks, Matt.
Cheers, Andrew. And yeah, it's a good opportunity to remind people that if you do have any questions about anything that we're talking about, do feel free to pop a question into the question and answer function at the bottom of the webinar, or in the chat function. You should be able to send us a message on there as well. So yeah, so to talk about research, well, as you probably gathered, it's quite unusual to have a live amphibian collection in a natural history museum, and that's effectively one big component of what Manchester Museum is. But it's something that we have been very proud of to have over about 60 years now, to have live collections here in the museum. And through our work here, we've been able to do lots of the traditional roles that a natural history collection would do. So develop expertise, work with researchers, taxonomists, describing new species, and also really creating and holding and storing vast sort of historical databases, almost time capsules that can help us look back at biodiversity look back at environments and different habitats and see how they're changing over time and through human impact. So it's a really valuable resource. But as Andrew's already alluded to, one thing that we are very passionate about is obviously engaging with the public and engaging with our visitors and educating. And through this work, we're also able to do a lot of fundraising. And this fundraising, combined with the live collection that we have here, has been sort of vital to us pioneering some really exciting non-invasive techniques, which I'm going to talk about in this next slide. So this picture here is a colleague of mine who's working on another project, Juana Barker, who's been helping us with some work out in Costa Rica, where we're pioneering some genetic techniques called environmental DNA. And this is a project that I'm working on as part of a collaboration with my PhD, which I'm currently undertaking with the University of Salford, Manchester Museum, and collaborators in Central America. And what we're trying to do is develop non-invasive techniques for detecting and understanding more about the vast biodiversity in some of these areas. Conservation is often poorly funded, and that's why we'll be promoting the ways that you can support the projects. So things like Sponsor a Frog and some of the initiatives that Lewis will be talking about later. It is really important to support these initiatives. But what we have to do is make sure that we use that money effectively and as efficiently as possible. So techniques like this eDNA enables us to really target our conservation initiatives and make sure that we get effectively the best bang for the buck that we can in terms of making the best outcomes for these endangered species. So finding out where they are, where they're living. This information can then be used to promote legislation, to protect habitats, to connect habitats. And one of the really important ways we do that is by getting a better understanding of the genetic health of these rare animals. As they've reduced from huge distributions down to very small populations, we often find that they're struggling in terms of the genes that are present in the population. So making sure that we can detect this in non-invasive ways, we can then enable Lewis and other colleagues at universities to push for connections between forests or protections or expanded protections on these forests that we're working with, because all our work really is about sort of protecting the long-term survival chances of these amazing animals. Some of the other work we've been doing has been involved in trialing software, looking at biometric stuff, so ways that we can photograph these animals and not have to handle them too much, and make sure that we can understand the sizes and the sort of trajectory of these populations over time. So it's all really exciting stuff, but it's brought together through collaboration. And I just wanted to highlight this because this is what this whole talk is about, is collaboration. And working at the museum, I've been very fortunate to work with some amazing universities, NGOs, government organizations all around the world. And one of the main aims of the museum is to be as inclusive, to be imaginative and caring. And by joining all of these organizations together with our amazing volunteers here at the museum, with our visitors who can support us through the sponsorships, but with the local communities in these areas, it's a really great project to really showcase all of that amazing work. So that's, I think, something very important to highlight at this point. So at this point, I think it would be a good opportunity to pass over to Eric, who in his role as project managers is really the boots on the ground, ensuring that these projects run as fantastically as they do.
Thank you, Matthew. Well, welcome back. We also work, besides the Athalopus fantastic project with START, where we got, Matthew, we got a question there. We can answer some of them, maybe between us. Very nice one. I want you to, if we jump out in the question, to answer it. Well, for in our case, the monitoring program that we started just last year had to be stopped because of the COVID restrictions. And it has been a long time without going back to the place that we doing monitoring. So this is for me, this is the bad side of this pandemic into the project. But I guess for the museum was a time to have a breath and then rethink about the exhibition and things like that. I don't know if Andrew can say something about it.
Yeah, it's been obviously it's been difficult for us, but we've been able to go into the museum. We're very lucky that we were able to go in and look after the animals on a daily basis still. That's the most important thing. And the health is really sort of, it hasn't impacted on the animals' health in any way, but it has allowed us to be able to develop the exhibits and things like that really. But we're looking forward to Eric being able to get back into the field to continue so that we've got some comparable data as we continue on there with this particular project, and particularly as this road develops through Santa Fe National Park, it's really important that the monitoring continues. So yeah, that's a really good point, Eric.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, one of our exciting projects was the sea turtle project. Well, sea turtles are taxa that are very important for ocean conservation and biodiversity. They keep a very important role to maintain the ecosystems, but also because of the behavior, the particular behavior. For those that don't know about it, the females nest in the specific beaches, but they travel long ways, some of them long ways, to their foraging grounds. And during this journey, they traverse different countries, different boundaries. So they are facing different threats along the way. This is very important. Well, with our project, we started in 2018, thanks to a grant from Panama Wildlife Conservation Charity in London. And on the way, we got some collaborators that the NOAA, the Marine Sea Turtle Program, and also the biochemistry, coastal biochemistry lab of the University of Ceará in Brazil. And later we got a small grant, a small seed fund from Fundación Natura of Panama to develop some workshops related to sea turtle conservation. Then our first focus was looking for litterbacks nesting sites along a very isolated area in the Azuero Peninsula in the south central area of Panama. But then we ended up discovering one particular beach that appears to be one important nesting site in the eastern tropical Pacific for green turtles. There are few sites specific for green turtles, nesting sites along the eastern tropical Pacific, and in Central America there are almost nothing. So, well, we have this place, and we want to continue working with because this species is endangered. Besides doing the identification, sorry, Liz, can go back, please. Besides doing the identification of the species, we're also uh, doing some community outreach. We're amazed because these places are so isolated that almost there's no communication, only by riding horses or maybe by boat. So we were the first NGO talking to these people about conservation and in particular about sea turtle conservation. So there is a paper now in review, and we going to add to the world database of sea turtles nesting sites, new nesting sites from Panama. And one important thing is habitat restoration in the future, and we will talk to you about it a little bit more about it. We want to restore the habitats where these sea turtles nest along the coastline, because some of the habitats have been destroyed by land reclamation or by real estate or agricultural and livestock expansion. Well, next list, please. This project was the base later on for us to apply for the small grant program from the Global Environmental Fund in Panama through an initiative called Azuero Sostenible. We got a very small fund. Then we continue and expand our previous experience and the southwest coast of Azuero to the southeast coast of Azuero Peninsula. And we implement the same methodology, getting local ecological knowledge for the people to explore unsurveyed beaches for nesting turtles. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, then we have to stop the monitoring with the local people. And then we have to rethink our approach. And this is why we developed this Tortu app. It's an Android mobile application that is just a pilot application that we start distributing along the partners, the people, local people, and organizations to retrieve information from the specific beaches that they are going through at night or daytime, or events that they can report about sea turtles. But this app works online. It means that you are able to report only when you have internet connection. And because the area is very isolated, there's no internet everywhere. So we hope in the future to get some funds, some donations that can help us to upgrade the app so it can work offline as well. Well, I think the next slides will show you just a set of pictures about the activities we develop with this project. Some um, educational workshops with the schools, the kids. There in the corner, on the left up corner, you will see it's a model of the leatherback. It's a real size model, 2 meters, you know, big, for the kids to have the impact or the idea how big this animal is, because maybe nobody of them have seen this animal before in their life, but time go, these animals go and nest in the beaches. Also, we do the fish patrol, sorry, beach patrolling. We check the tracks, we monitor the sea turtles, and also important for us, we involve the communities and the students doing beach cleanup activities along the year. Next is a video that tells you a little bit about the project that we started with sea turtles in Panama.
Eric, I just wanted to add something as well to the things that you had said about this project. Is thanks to the amazing donation that we received a couple of years ago, we have been able to start this project in Panama. And some of the important things that we are very proud of is that we have been the first ones in that area doing not only conservation, but also research and approaching the communities, as Eric mentioned, and try to find scientific information that we can use later on to create a model or a way so we can work with the communities for the protection of the area. Panama is extremely biodiverse and it's a very beautiful country. And for example, this beach that you're looking there is one of the ones that Eric mentioned that that has a high concentration of green turtles, but all the coastline has been unfortunately cut down. Uh, I think it was last year or the year before. So it's an ongoing battle that we have. It's just to communicate with the local communities and farmers and try to sort of reach an agreement with them and make them understand that you know what we're doing is not something crazy, because most of the time when we've been in those places there's no tourists and they're so isolated, and then suddenly see Eric and myself there up all night with a torch looking for sea turtles, and they think that we're crazy because you know what are you doing that, you know, there's no importance. But then we show them the videos that we create and we explain why it's important to protect these species, and then they change. Their attitude toward us change, and to the point that some of them have even give us their keys so we can access straight to the beach with our cars. So things are changing, but are not changing fast enough, and we want to change a little bit faster because there's not much time to save these species today.
Thanks, Luis, for that contribution. I think also I have to highlight, in particular, this Sea Turtle project. We got support, logistic support, and some manpower support from the Ministry of Environment of Panama. This is very important because we collaborate together. So some things that can be developed easily doing collaboration. That's our approach also with the University of Manchester. Well, there's another project that we're very proud of, is the Wildlife Surveillance Project. Um, because there are many elusive animals and amazing animals. They are not really well spotted and difficult to track and to follow. We use state-of-the-art camera traps, deployed in this case in a very Sky Island uh, National Park. Is called Cerroya National Park. It's located in the southern central part of Panama. It's an island of forest surrounded by deforested land. So it's very important to have a monitoring of the population, of the health of the populations inside this area, to also understand if the conservation measures, the work of the authorities and the work of the NGOs is preserving this habitat for these animals. So we started in 2019. We had 20 cameras. Sadly, I have to say we lost 5 of these cameras were stolen, probably by hunters, illegal hunters, and 3 of them were also damaged. So we lost a set of valuable camera straps, and hopefully we can have some support to get back to the original amount of cameras that we had. Well, the important is that down, for example, we discover or we try to discover the movement and the distribution of the animals all over the park. It has never done before. So it's a very hard work. We will show some videos about it and we talk about it. But again, we use this information to provide data not only for the communities but also for the Ministry of Environment, because local rangers go with us to the field. So we train local people and also rangers how to set up the cameras, how to install the cameras properly, and how to retrieve them. And later on, they can observe the information of these amazing animals. We'll see the video right now.
So, and also I want to add to what Eric says there. We in our charity, one of the things that we try to do is also use social media and visuals that we generate with all the cameras and mobile phones and anything that or people in the ground has. And we put together these videos that also hopefully educate people about Azuero region or the national parks in Panama where we work. And this is an incredible hard work, I must say. The last time I was in that park, it was 3 years ago with an expedition with the Natural History Museum of Paris. And I nearly faint and die. I was so tired because it's such a hard work. The jungles of Panama usually in that region are high up in the mountains, and it takes a lot of time to reach places where you can find animals like these ones. We've been quite surprised because it seems like some of the areas there's a good amount of animals, especially a male jaguars like you see here, but also some of the prey that keep the population of jaguars alive. And as Eric mentioned, this park has been isolated, unfortunately, from other forested areas in Panama due to deforestation and the location where it is, and has become basically surrounded by sea, half of it, and the other half is just deforested land. But the animals seems to be okay. Some of them are thriving, and we were quite happy and surprised to see that.
Luis, I want to add something very special. Is that the first monitoring that was developed there, it was back in 2014 in one section of the park, but we went to increase and really cover the entire park. And we just came back two weeks ago from deploying the new set of cameras, the remaining ones. And then in the last assessment, we discovered that what we photographed female, jaguar female, last year, and it was first photographed in 2014. So it has been around, still alive, around, and moving at long distances. So it's a miracle, and it's a very gift moment for us to discover this, and hopefully through restoration of the habitats inside the park and outside the park, we can create these corridors that you mentioned, and also to maintain the habitat for the future of these amazing animals. And remember also, many of these animals that you can spot here, they are seed dispersers. So they eat fruits and keep the seeds in the good, and then later on they transfer the seeds of the trees long distances, so to keep the variability and genetic differentiation of this habitat as well of the trees.
Yeah, and one of the things also mentioning is because we all know that tree planting is very important today, and we have our camera traps, and Eric has been in the jungle along with Joelvin and other guys that help us. They've been looking at different tree species that are important for these animals, and that's the cue for us to see this is a good place to put the camera. So literally finding those very special trees in the jungle that attract a large amount of wildlife, either during the dry season or the rainy seasons, and there are different species like that. So we came with this idea, why don't we protect wildlife by planting more trees, which is something that we're going to talk about after this video. But we need help. We need collaboration. We are surviving at the moment from the donation that we have received from the UK public 3 years ago, which has been very, very generous. And now we have received grants from Fundación Natura, the United Nations Development Programs in Panama. But those projects are restricted.
Yeah,
So
limited,
that money. So we're looking for donations and collaboration long term, so we can deploy these cameras, deploy more cameras not only in this park but other parks in Panama, and see how these animals are doing. And these images are inspiring so many children around Cerro Olla National Park, and they just get so excited. We want to see more, and tell me more about those animals. How can we protect them? So this is something beautiful that we're doing, and it's helping to the protection.
So for the audience that are watching these videos right now, well, I want to thank all the people that have been helping us to develop this C22 project and also the wildlife surveillance project. And well, if you want to come along, you're welcome to join us and walk along 4 hours, 6 hours through the jungle, go into the boat for 3 hours, and then ride a horse for 3 more hours to get to the places. You're more than welcome to help us. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so very quickly, last year during the pandemic, when everything was closed and we didn't know what to do, Eric and I would just say, look, what are we gonna do? You know, we need to start thinking about fundraising and carry on with our projects. And then we decided to think about Leaf. Leaf is the first e-commerce platform designed from scratch to link wild animals with very important and iconic native trees in Panama. So one thing that we want to do as well with our charity and this project is to educate or introduce an easy way for people who are interested in trees or interested in wildlife, and they want to contribute to projects that help to boost the biodiversity of our planet. We are launching this project in the next few weeks, but I wanted to take the opportunity to mention it to you because if you go to leaf.pa or look for Leaf Wildlife in Instagram, please just follow us and like us so you can get updates as soon as we launch. And then please, as soon as you get information there, streaming through our social medias, share with everyone because we need help spreading the word. So I'm gonna show you, this is a 2-minute video, and hopefully it will summarize what are we trying to do with Leaf in Panama. So I hope you enjoy. So yes, hopefully that will introduce the idea. We're very excited. We have a lot of people here in the UK helping us and very interested in promoting the idea of LEAF. There are some people out there planting trees, doing an amazing work. But you know, we also trying to do our part as a wildlife conservation charity, providing now an e-commerce website where you can literally go and learn about animals in the rainforest of Panama that are critically endangered, like the great green frog. And this is, for example, one of the species that we're trying to save through the project OLIVE. We discovered that Cerro Olla National Park has some of the populations of macaws that we want to study, and they are critically endangered in the whole Latin America, Central America, where the distribution range is estimated that are less than 1,000 breeding pairs left in the world. And there are some of them in Cerro Olla and also in the north part of Panama. And this is us with our camera traps in Cerro Olla that we put to collect all this incredible footage that nobody has done it before. So what we're using is the camera traps that our charity acquired to collect all the information that we put in our project LEAF, so you can learn about these incredible animals. So I'm gonna show you another one that I think this is one of my favorites, because if you've been in the jungle in Central America or South America, you're familiar with the noise of the howler monkey. And just mentioning there, like Eric and I, we were recently there with some partners from the Manchester Museum, Amanda and Gary, and this footage was literally taken outside, you know, on top of our tent.
The backyard.
And they came around at 5 in the morning, and there were a troop of maybe 20 or 30 of them, and they were incredibly noisy, but it was incredibly beautiful as well to have that sense of being in the jungle. So Leaf is trying to pair these animals that they survive from eating leaves and nuts and you know, fruits and any other things, and then connect them that with the native tree that we're using. And some of the trees that we have, for example, that we're trying to promote during the LEAF project are native species. One of them is this one, which is the Nazareno, is the name in Spanish. They are very beautiful trees. Some people in Panama plant them in agroforestry, but some, like the jacaranda, for example, what we're trying to do is to find trees that are incredibly beautiful looking trees, so people want to buy them and they want to have them in their house or in their farm. But also, we know that trees like this are important for wildlife. I mean, we want to bring back them home, for example. We want to bring back the ecosystem that they used to thrive. And this is what we're trying to do with LEAF, provided the right trees and put them in the right place. And finally, you know, probably you've been in the news in Panama that they're talking about the guayacans. And this is another example of trees that we want to sell through our platform. And then when we plant them in specific areas that we have to, like previously selected with our scientists, will make the place better, not only visually, but also in the ecosystem that they produce. Eric?
Yeah, man. Well, we just yesterday collecting some seeds of jacaranda, some around, and we share with Matthew. And it's exciting when people just approach you and ask you why you collecting those seeds. Well, it's for wildlife, but normally people think, yeah, you know, for beauty, for reforestation. But in this case, it's besides that, it's for wildlife. But well, we are excited with this project. This news project that complements all the work that we have been doing. And as Luis mentioned, this has been our COVID baby during the COVID pandemic. The idea came out.
Exactly. And then please go to live.pa, and leave your email so we can send you a notification as soon as we launch. And then please share the idea, share the concept with as many friends and family as you have, because we need to get planting, we need to save our planet, boost biodiversity. And now we are providing that with an e-commerce website to make that very efficient, very easy, very interesting for anyone to be part of it and save our planet. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much to Lewis and Eric for joining us, especially Eric. I know you've been having to liaise with us in completely different time zones and everything, so we really appreciate that, especially just coming off the back of some grueling field work, I believe, as well. So really do appreciate you coming online for this. I hope everyone's enjoyed the webinar today. We've got obviously all these links up here for more information. I would strongly recommend people visiting panamawildlife.org and checking out the projects. There's so much more information on there. Also on YouTube, there's loads of videos that Lewis has made that really highlight some of the amazing work that they've done for all these different projects in the field, the education components, as well as the work that we've been able to support them through Manchester Museum. So it's a real pleasure to be able to talk about this work today, especially on World Wildlife Day. And I just felt that these projects fit so well with the theme this year about forests and livelihoods, you know, sustaining people and the planet. It really does tick all of those boxes. So we've had a couple of questions. Hopefully we've still got time. I've not done one of these webinars before, so hopefully it won't kick us off just yet. But I'll just have a quick look at the question. So we've got one question. Oh, Eric, you've already answered it. So Eric got asked what his favorite animal was. I don't know if you want to answer it live as well for the benefit of everyone else, Eric.
Well, actually, because I did my PhD with this frog, it's the black and green poison frog. It's quite common along Panama, but it has a Telopus varius, has a differentiation, different population, has different colors and marks. And it's quite exciting when you go to the field and you follow them in the field, you see the behavior and the things they do. It's very amazing. That I love it. I love that frog.
Brilliant. We've also had a fantastic question about highlighting the great benefits of involvement of local communities in conservation, and a question especially pertaining to the Artilopus varius work. Is there any concern of increased illegal collection if awareness to rarity and location is raised?
That's a really good question, actually. But we do have people on the ground. The community are very aware of any strangers or any newcomers. So it is something that we are aware of. It's always a risk. But with the animals that we have out of the park that are in captivity, they're under strict regulations. We can't pass them on to any other people. So any that do appear in the trade or in private hands, we know that they've been taken illegally. So between those two measures, and the Panamanian authorities are very much aware that, you know, that there's an underground kind of collecting scene, and you'd be surprised at the information that they know about those collectors. So you wouldn't want to get stopped at the airport coming out of Panama. Let's put it that way. Excellent.
Okay, and we've had another question here about climate change. So knowing that climate change contributes highly in the widespread or the spreading of the fungus that kills these frogs, is this project considered how to improve the resilience of the Harlequin frogs to the fungus? Well, from one respect, the research work that we're conducting is really valuable to this end, because what we're trying to understand is why some of these populations seem to be surviving, where most of the population seems to have completely disappeared and died off. So through getting a better understanding of these populations, their genetics, the climate of the particular habitat that they live in, the composition of the animals, we can start to build up a detailed picture. All that data really contributes to answering those questions, because it could be a variety of different influences that make these animals more susceptible. And maybe that particular population has some resilience in it, or perhaps there are no species bringing the fungus into that habitat, or perhaps the habitat itself is too hot, or it's varied enough that allows the amphibians to regulate their temperature, which is one of the ways that they seem to be able to fight off this fungus.
Okay. Matthew, I want to add something. Is for example, if you watch the slide that Andrew showed about the monitoring side, is cleared an area, half of the side is pasture land, and then the other half is secondary forest. So a way to increase the resilience of the habitat for the frogs, for the benefit of the frogs, then it's necessary to increase the forest cover with the right species that emulates similar environment that we have been monitoring for now.
Exactly, and one of the things that we're trying to do to add up is we leave with anyone who buying trees, native trees, with through our platform that will enable us to raise the funds to carry on with supporting the conservation projects that we do in Panama, but also we will have the trees and the technology to plant those trees and give them a the best start possible in their life. So when you plant that tree, we will make sure that it will survive and it will become a mature tree that will help wildlife in the future.
Okay, some other great questions coming through. A great one here from Nathan. Great seminar. How do you ensure the genetic stability of your captive populations of frogs at Manchester's vivarium?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. As I highlighted, we always try and take minimum numbers, and it's always a little bit difficult. Some people say that you need a minimum of, say, 20 different bloodlines. But the fact is that we don't really know with amphibians. It's different with different animal groups and how the genetics affect the population. But for sure, some of these populations have actually developed from very small numbers in the first place. In Panama, in particular, some of these poison dart frogs, they'll go from one island and you'll only get a couple that will make it to the island, and then they'll repopulate. They'll even, they change colour completely, the pumilio. They look completely different from one island to the next, and that's just generated from probably a pair that have made it over to that particular island. So we're not really too sure about the genetic side of it, but what we do try in captivity is obviously to make the gene pool as wide as possible, so that in the future, if we do try to head start and introduce tadpoles back into these areas, then we do have the widest genetic diversity possible. I hope that answers that question to some degree.
Yeah, and I think it's worth highlighting as well that some of the non-invasive research that we can do, so even just taking swabs of these animals or looking at the genetic material left in water samples, can help us understand how diverse populations are. And that information can then help us to decide which animals should be paired up together to increase the genetic variability within the population. So we do take these concerns really seriously, and it's a part of the research aspects that we're involved in, that we can do it to that level. We've done it with lemur frogs, we've done it with lots of different species we've been involved in and had great success. So we're hopeful we'll be able to do the same with these Atelopus.
Yeah, I would back that up exactly, because we were the first people to really look at the genetics of the frogs, say the lemur frogs, at that particular level, at the microsatellite level, which is basically like genetic fingerprinting, to be able to differentiate between specimens so that we could then make sure that it was a diverse population as possible. So we're pioneering a lot of this genetic work. We were the first people to ever do that work with a critically endangered amphibian.
Brilliant. So had another question here from Gary, who's asked, what is the plan going forward for the Manchester-born Harlequin frogs? Well, one big part of that plan is the huge exhibit that we've been working on over lockdown. So we're really excited about it. We've worked really hard and worked with some fantastic designers and experts in creating these artificial habitats. And it's going to be a complete replica of these mountain streams from Panama. And these young that have been bred here in the museum will be populating that exhibit, hopefully in the coming months. And then when we're able to welcome the public back into the museum, they will be on display. So fingers crossed that all goes well, but they will be a fundamental component of raising awareness and raising funds for the future of the research work that we're doing in the field and protecting the frogs out in Santa Fe National Park. Okay, I'll just have a quick check if we've got any more questions. There's one here from Tom, which is a great one. So in summary, your video said that Harlequin frogs had never been bred in captivity before, so there must have been some risk of project failure.
Yeah. So it was very exciting for us because we'd never bred these before. The females live in the forests and we keep them terrestrially. We've got some really beautiful tanks for them, and we keep them quite sparsely. We're aware that these are quite territorial species. When we put them together, we put them in a breeding tank. We replicated the flow, the water levels that are found in the wild. And the water levels were a lot deeper than we imagined to begin with. When we put them in there, they went into amplexus, they paired up more or less straight away. And then to our surprise, they went totally aquatic. And it was amazing. They were walking on the bottom as if they were walking on land, and they could go underneath the water for about an hour without surfacing. It was incredible to see how they adapted so quickly to a life underwater. And they were in there for over a month before they actually spawned. And it was exactly the same time of year that we found them in the wild. But it was very nerve-wracking. We'd not done it before. We'd have to trial various different things, but we were very lucky. And even the algae and the diet had been trialed with other species of Atelopus, particularly with Luis Coloma, actually in Ecuador. He's been working with some really critically endangered Atelopus species. And so we've been getting advice from Luis. And yeah, it was very touch and go, but we're very pleased, and we actually raised every single one that we wanted to raise through to adult, to sub-adult now. They're looking amazing, and it's been a learning curve for us all in Manchester. But it's something that will stand us in good stead for reproducing them in the future. Once you've got that key and you know what you're doing, it can really lead to further success and further research.
Definitely, brilliant. So a couple of last ones for Eric and Lewis before we finish up. So how do you find these areas and get in and out of them, Eric? That must be quite difficult.
Well, we'd start with the same approach we used to local ecological knowledge. It was back, I guess, 2014. Two students from biology here in Panama, they write down their thesis work and they pass it to me to review it. And I spotted one of the frogs that appeared in the thesis was an Atelopus one. And I knew that it was critically endangered. And I asked them, where did you find it? So they took me to the mountains, to the place they're supposed to be, but we found nothing. And then we started thinking, oh, we should try. And then we start doing a survey to different communities, doing interviews, and showing the pictures of the frogs, different morphs. And they'd say, oh, yes, I saw this on this creek and that creek. And then we started a program to monitor these creeks, looking for the frogs. It was a very hard work for almost 1 year. And then, luckily for us, we discovered 2 or 3 places with the frogs. And then we'd start the Senacid project and so on. I want to add something to a previous question about the climate change that just came to my mind. Well, last year we faced these terrible storms, Iota, the 2 hurricanes that come across the Caribbean and very close to Panama. And it was absolutely devastating in the field. Even we were in the field when this happened in November, and we have to run away from the area. And after I came back, I saw the destruction this happened along the creeks and into the forest. So climatic change is also affecting the environment of this where these animals live. And we simply, when I came back months later, we found no Atelopus at all in the area, in one area where we previously they thrived. So one aspect of all this story is also the climatic change, not only the fungus, not only the anthropogenic, the indirect anthropogenic or direct anthropogenic effect, but also the climatic change in this way. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, it's a brilliant answer as well. And I think that's something that I think what Lewis and yourself are doing in terms of the LEAF project is expanding the areas which these animals can inhabit, will make them more resilient to climate change moving forward, so that they're not, these tiny populations are so vulnerable to deforestation or to climatic events that any sort of changes we can make to help expand them is going to be massively important to their future survival. Brilliant. So one last question for both of you. When you're talking about these huge numbers of biodiversity, how do you differentiate between all of these species? That must be a difficult job.
Well, one of the things that you know, I've been living in London for 13 years now, and I go back to my garden every day, and I see a couple of birds here, and I never seen a reptile or a frog or something like that. So because we're in Europe and there are not many animals, but I'm used to. I'm a biologist. I've been in the field in Panama. I read a lot of information about how many animals we have, and when I tell people, like, you know, we are smaller than Ireland. And then in that very small place, we have a huge concentration of wildlife and trees, and many other species that haven't even been discovered yet. And this is another story that we have with the Natural History Museum of London, which was a project that we did a few years ago now. And what we're trying to do as a scientist is find techniques and ways that we can quantify biodiversity, but and measure it in a way that doesn't take 10 years or 15 years in the traditional way of cataloging animals, and then be able to tell the authorities, this animal is only found here, please, let's protect this area. But in 10 years or 15 years, that area might not be there. And this is happening very quickly. In my videos, I mentioned Panama is losing 8,000 hectares of jungle every year. And for me, it's just like, that's shocking. And then we need to raise awareness about the protection of all the biodiversity that we have. When I started as a biologist in Panama, I remember we were looking for compounds, molecules inside leaves and in the jungle to treat cancer, malaria, Chagas disease, and many other human afflictions. And all of that started because of the biodiversity, all the molecules that we have in the forest that we have not discovered yet. So it's important for us to study all of that and protect that as well, and find techniques that help us to find answers quickly, not too late.
Fabulous. Yeah, no, that's so important. Okay, so we haven't had any more questions come through, so I think it's probably a good point to end the webinar. But just to reiterate, please do follow the links here on social medias and follow Panama Wildlife to keep in touch with them and discover the launch date of the LEAF project. I'm so excited about it. I think it's going to be a really great initiative. But yeah, thanks to all of our participants, all the attendees for bearing with us, and thank you to the technology as well for behaving itself today. And yeah, hopefully we'll be back to talk about some more exciting developments in the near future. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you to you, Matt, for organising it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting us.
Pleasure. All right.
Thanks for inviting us.
Okay. Bye.
Excellent. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.